After enduring years of mistreatment from my in-laws, I made the decision to end my marriage. Their response to my ultimate choice was truly unforgettable. So the ineffectual housekeeper has finally chosen to depart. Your role was simply to look after Liam until he transitioned to college. It will be refreshing to enjoy more space once this unwelcome presence is removed. Just as I was ready to step out the door, my patience worn thin, my in-laws unleashed a barrage of harsh words at me. They spread falsehoods about our son's wife engaging in an affair, and even the relatives fell for their deceit. Their outrageous accusations stirred a tempest within me, threatening to unleash all the emotions I had been holding back. What had I done to earn this fate? I had put up with it because they were my husband's family. But I could no longer tolerate this treatment. As I hurriedly gathered my things in silence, their voices echoed behind me, pressing me to depart swiftly. Tears threatened to spill. Yet I held them back, determined not to show my vulnerability in front of the crowd. Within, shadows of vengeance danced in a tumultuous whirl. After hurrying out of the house, I retrieved my phone from my bag, dialed a specific location, and confidently provided instructions. "Excuse me? Are you certain? You recently had that house constructed." I believed this would be the most effective method to inflict maximum harm on those individuals. This is bound to send the in-laws into a frenzy. Amanda is my name. When I was young, I experienced the loss of my father due to an accident, and my mother raised me on her own. My mother succeeded in getting me through high school, but college was out of reach for us. So I set aside my dreams of further education and began working as a clerk at a law firm owned by a family member. The environment was rich with opportunities for growth, and the camaraderie among colleagues made it a pleasant place to be productive. I appreciate my relatives for giving me a chance even though I only have a high school diploma. At the age of 30, I was introduced to Edward by a friend, and we tied the knot. Edward had lost his wife. Liam, his son, was a high school senior getting ready for college entrance exams. The pressure seemed to weigh heavily on him, leaving him perpetually tense and hardly engaging in conversation with me. At Edward's request, we chose to live together in a two-family house. Considering his elderly parents, having only lived with my mother, I felt a sense of joy at the prospect of more family members, yet the journey that followed was anything but smooth. Upon moving in with my in-laws, I found myself taking on the responsibility for all the household chores. I had hoped my in-laws, who were at home, might lend a hand. But they firmly believed that housework was solely the wife's responsibility and refused to change their stance. Despite my hectic work schedule, I persevered with cooking, laundry, and cleaning each day, driven by necessity. Consider leaving your job to embrace the role of a housewife. That is what brings joy to a woman. Indeed, as a partner, it's customary to dedicate yourself to your spouse and their family. It's quite bold to engage in work beyond the confines of home. My in-laws, seemingly displeased with my decision to keep working, voiced their complaints daily. One time, I requested Edward to grab something we had overlooked on his way back from work, and my in-laws reprimanded me, exclaiming, "How could you impose errands on our son?" In their eyes, their son was paramount, and they appeared to regard his wife merely as a caretaker of their home. That might explain their dissatisfaction with my decision to work instead of being at home. Yet, even if they deemed me arrogant, my work remained my life's calling. When I expressed my inability to quit, my in-laws responded with mocking laughter. A simple high school graduate clerk behaving as if they are superior. Edward is a top-tier income generator. Shouldn't you be at home, taking care of your husband? Is there a particular reason you're interested in working outdoors? Quite dubious, I must say. Despite the harshness of their words, I remained resolute in my decision to keep my job, undeterred by my in-laws' criticisms. Hey, Liam, can you explain what this is all about? I presented Liam with specific documents. The invoice for his phone usage arrived, revealing an unexpectedly steep amount from the previous month. Upon examining the specifics, it appeared he had been engaging in in-app purchases within mobile games. What's the fuss about? The items I desired were unattainable. This amount should suffice. I had been concerned that he was becoming overly engrossed in mobile games, and my worries turned out to be well-founded. My decision to keep an eye on him, believing it could serve as a helpful distraction from exam studies, ended up having the opposite effect. Liam, instead of offering an apology for my inquiries, took a defensive stance and maintained that he had committed no wrongdoing. You express this sentiment, but do you truly grasp the effort required to achieve this level of income? This exceeds mere pocket change. This warrants some contemplation. Unable to ignore such a steep charge, I reprimanded Liam harshly, though Liam no longer spoke in defiance. He shot me a fierce glare before wordlessly withdrawing to his room. I sighed and muttered to myself, he's not reflecting at all. I aimed to convey to him that, as a high school student, he ought to be mindful of how he spends his parents' money on in-app purchases, yet Liam responded with a rebellious demeanor. This incident reached an unforeseen destination. Liam went to my in-laws in tears, sharing how I had reprimanded him. Hello, Amanda. Did you really give Liam a harsh reprimand? Liam overspent on mobile games. Do not even think about lecturing my grandson, you outsider. Isn't it possible to allow him some relief from stress? It may be difficult for someone with your limited background to grasp, but that child is diligently preparing for his entrance exams. Silence, please. It seems they were quite displeased with my reprimand of Liam. My in-laws scolded me, insisting that I should not interfere. Despite my efforts to present my case, the two of them erupted in emotional outbursts, rendering any meaningful conversation futile. Liam, observing from the hallway, chuckled at the sight of me being reprimanded. I apologize. I will exercise greater caution moving forward. It's great that you grasp the concept. Don't lose perspective, you're simply a wife. Though I offered my apologies to my in-laws outwardly, having run out of arguments, I was internally consumed by a whirlwind of unresolved emotions. Later, as I walked past Liam in the hallway, he uttered something astonishing. Refrain from interfering with your inadequate education. You don't hold the role of a mother in my mind. I truly can't understand what drew Dad to someone like you. Liam uttered these words with venom and walked away. No one in this house acknowledged my presence as part of the family. What caused everyone to treat me with such coldness? Perhaps it stemmed from being brought up by a single parent and having just a high school education. Regardless of the effort I put into my job and household tasks, it seemed to them that it was merely a given, and they felt no obligation to express any appreciation. Regardless of how exhausted I appeared, they continued to regard me as if I were a housekeeper. They likely viewed me merely as a useful instrument. When I spoke with my husband Edward, he brushed it off, claiming that everyone had good intentions. However, I was neither an instrument nor a caretaker. I once believed they might come to understand, but that belief was painfully crushed. Amidst the ongoing turmoil of existence, an event transpired. One day, we learned that Edward had been involved in an accident at work and would require hospitalization for a week. What a relief! I had some concerns, but he should receive workers' compensation. Correct? He's a top-notch employee, so he will manage just fine. We can find comfort knowing he is in the hospital. Amid their concern for their son's accident, my frugal in-laws were unmistakably preoccupied with the potential loss of income. However, they appeared to ease their tension upon reflecting on the workers' compensation. Then they began to impose strict limitations on my use of electricity and gas, insisting on no wasteful expenditures. Whenever they deemed something to be even a bit wasteful, they would abruptly cut off the electricity and gas without a word, even in the midst of my usage. The shower was utterly dreadful. Squandering once more. For how much longer will you be using that water? Such a disappointment. Exercise restraint. You leech. After a long day at work, I sought solace in a quick shower, only to be met with strict time constraints. Just 5 minutes was all I was allowed, and any attempt to linger beyond that would result in loud knocks and shouts from outside the bathroom door, demanding my immediate exit. Daily fatigue weighed heavily on me, and I was exhausted by the sensation of being perpetually watched. Moreover, everything I utilized was deemed excessive, and my meals, everyday essentials, and even beauty products were scrutinized by my in-laws. The self-centered and insensitive behavior of my in-laws persisted. While I was at work, they would intrude into my room without consent, claiming it was to monitor for unnecessary expenses. As they sifted through the clutter, they stumbled upon my old planner. Upon my return home, they faced me with it. What is this? What gives you the right to go through my planner without asking? Return it to me. Your anxiety raises questions. What an incredible woman. My father-in-law contorted his face and expelled those words. Who is this Blake mentioned here? Are you involved in something secretive? The planner certainly contained an entry for dinner with Blake. However, that was the name of the director at the law firm where I was employed. It was entirely appropriate. Even when I insisted that Blake and I didn't have that kind of relationship, my in-laws were resolute in their belief that it was an affair and refused to hear otherwise. My in-laws seized this as an ideal chance to cast blame on me, labeling me an adulteress nearly every day. Liam, too, embraced their harsh sentiments, hurling at me a barrage of cruel insults, branding me with the label of a filthy slut. During my husband's hospitalization, my position in the family got worse and worse. I knew that even if Edward returned home from the hospital, things wouldn't improve. What my in-laws and Liam were unaware of was the ridiculous reason behind Edward's current hospitalization. A few days later, Liam's hard work bore fruit as he seemingly received acceptance to his top-choice university. However, I discovered this much later, and even then, it was due to an astonishing coincidence. My in-laws deliberately kept this from me, clearly with the intention of causing me distress. Why are you hesitating? Today is the celebration party for Liam, as I mentioned. Upon my return from work, I found a multitude of relatives assembled there. What is this all about? All eyes are on the moment. Quickly get the meal ready. My mother-in-law insisted that I prepare a meal for a sizable gathering, catching me off guard as I had just come home. That's when I discovered Liam's acceptance celebration. And I had to dive into cooking right away, with no time to pause for a breath. See, I mentioned she's not fulfilling her role as a wife. Had we been aware of her true nature, we would have never permitted our son to wed her. She harshly reprimands Liam solely due to his status as a stepchild. She is an awful person. She ought to finalize her divorce promptly. As I hurriedly prepared the food, my in-laws sincerely informed the relatives of how inadequate a wife I was. It seems they chose not to inform me about Liam's acceptance celebration. Perhaps to embarrass me in front of the family. Their childish antics were so absurd that they transcended mere frustration and ventured into the realm of astonishment. Additionally, it appears that the wife is involved in an extramarital relationship. Our son is being misled. She fervently refutes it, yet one day we will uncover the truth and expel her from this home. Due to the falsehoods my in-laws spread regarding an alleged affair, even my relatives have come to believe their claims. Their outrageous accusations stirred a tempest within me, threatening to unleash all the emotions I had been holding back. What had I done to earn this fate? I had put up with it because they were my husband's family. But I could no longer tolerate this treatment. Your perspective is clear to me. Since it's evident that you don't desire a wife who lacks competence, I will make arrangements to depart shortly. Once the celebration party concluded and all the relatives departed, I expressed this to my in-laws. Ah, so you've finally seen the light? My mother-in-law, who seemingly harbored a strong dislike for me, smiled with delight. It seems the ineffective housekeeper has finally chosen to depart. With Liam's acceptance to university, your presence is no longer required. I appreciate all the effort you've put in so far. Your role was simply to support Liam until he embarked on his college journey. It will be refreshing to enjoy more space once this unwelcome presence is removed. Did you honestly believe that someone with only a high school education could join our family? They erupted into laughter. Their expressions were harsh and made me understand that they would remain unchanged in their ways. That will suffice. I appreciate all that you have done so far. I remained silent and swiftly gathered my things. Behind me, their voices echoed, pressing me to depart in haste. Tears threatened to spill. Yet I was resolute in my decision to hold them back in the presence of others. I departed with only the essentials in hand. I decided to book a hotel for the time being and hailed a taxi to communicate the destination. Within, shadows of vengeance danced in a tumultuous whirl. While in the car, I retrieved my phone from my bag and made a call to a specific location. It was a real estate company, and I provided my instructions confidently. I am putting all of that land and building up for sale. Excuse me? Are you certain? It was designed for two families to coexist harmoniously. Truly, as they mentioned, that house was constructed not long ago. Though it may appear irrational, I found it impossible to remain silent after experiencing such treatment. I believed this would be the most effective method to inflict maximum harm on those individuals. This is bound to send the in-laws into a frenzy. The following day, I promptly got a call from my in-laws. Me. What does this signify? Clarify your position immediately. The two were seething during the call. It seems that a representative from the real estate company likely visited their home first thing in the morning. It seems they must have discovered that the house and building were up for sale. What are the steps to sell this house independently? Did you take the deed? We are going to contact the authorities immediately. Get ready. My in-laws accused me of being a thief. However, they were unaware that I held the title to that land and building. I assure you, I have not taken anything unlawfully. The land and building are officially registered under my name. I also covered all the construction expenses, just so you know. Upon sharing this information, my in-laws burst into laughter. Be honest and face the situation. It's hard to believe that someone with only a high school education could amass that level of wealth. You deceiver. If you're skeptical, why not consult the real estate agent on site? Indeed. This is registered under the name of Amanda Sama. Upon hearing this with certainty, my in-laws were thrown into a frenzy. It cannot be processed. Deceptions. You must be in on this too. You won't get away with trying to commit fraud. Our son is an elite employee, right? He must have built this house in his name, so how? Though Edward donned a suit each morning, presenting himself as a dedicated employee of a prestigious company, he had actually been dismissed a year prior for creating disturbances in the workplace. The situation revolved around a matter concerning women, as Edward had been involved with several young women at the company. Upon discovering this, the company, known for its stringent adherence to compliance, terminated his employment for disciplinary reasons. Since that time, Edward had been bringing in a modest income from his part-time job, while I was covering over 90% of our living expenses. Neither my in-laws nor Liam were aware that Edward had lost his job. They had persistently belittled me. Yet the truth was that their son Edward was the real drain on everyone around him. Despite my anger towards Edward for his betrayal and his job loss, when he knelt before me and pleaded for forgiveness, I decided to grant him one final opportunity. I chose to remain silent about Edward's departure from his company. Yet this only solidified my in-laws' perception of me as the simple-minded wife who wed their distinguished son. For someone with only a high school education, you certainly have a way with words. My in-laws obstinately dismissed my words. With no progress in sight, I released a weary sigh. Continuing this argument served no purpose. I will send you the documents later. You can determine its truth when you observe them. Are there any documents available? Which documents are you referring to? Surely, you can grasp their meaning when you encounter them. Pardon me. With that, I ended the call on my own terms. Subsequently, I dispatched an eviction notice accompanied by my business card. The name of the law firm where I was employed appeared alongside the title preceding my name. The title was Attorney at Law. Despite not being able to attend university because of family circumstances, I successfully passed the preliminary examination for the bar exam while working at the law firm and conquered the challenging bar exam on my first attempt. In other terms, I was an authentic attorney. My in-laws reached out once more after noticing my business card. So, what's the verdict? Do you trust me now? Creating a business card is something anyone can do. You deceitful one must be attempting to deceive us. Asking Edward directly will reveal the truth to us. We shall remain skeptical until that moment arrives. My in-laws mentioned they were going to Edward's hospital and invited me to join them. Believing this to be the ultimate showdown, I consented. My in-laws stood in front of the hospital, arms crossed, their expressions radiating indignation. Your deceptions will soon come to light. They remained unconvinced by my words. I brushed past my in-laws and made my way to my husband's room. My in-laws rushed to keep up with me. Edward? Am I entering? I rapped gently on the hospital room door before stepping inside. An incredible scene revealed itself. Edward held a young woman close, their lips meeting in a tender kiss. The moment my in-laws stepped into the room, they caught sight of the entire scene unfolding before them. Ah! What brings everyone here? Startled by the unexpected arrival of family, Edward shoved the woman aside. The woman, her anger palpable from the abrupt dismissal, exited the hospital room with a downcast expression. You thought I was unfaithful, didn't you? What about your son? Upon uttering those words, my in-laws went ashen. I had observed Edward's unfaithfulness from the start and decided to engage a private investigator to delve into his actions. I retrieved the investigator's report from my bag and shared it with my in-laws. Edward's injury, which would require a week for recovery, was described by him as a workplace accident. However, the truth was that he had fractured his leg while attempting to sidestep dog droppings during a date with his mistress, having stepped into a drain. Do you find yourself more willing to trust what I say now? Your dear son is currently without a job, and he has also betrayed his wife while injuring himself in an incredibly reckless manner. It seems you were the one who initiated the dishonesty. Regarding the individual Blake referenced in your planner, my father-in-law, putting Edward's situation aside, persistently raised the issue of my alleged affair. Reporting Blake to the Bar Association might be a viable option. A lawyer engaging with a married woman should be subject to suitable disciplinary measures. My in-laws wore expressions of victory. In their minds, my affair was clearly an established truth. Your actions truly reflect a lack of wisdom. Blake is my partner in this secret relationship? This is utterly absurd, it brings me to the brink of tears. This is inescapable. There is no evidence to suggest that they aren't your affair partner. Ah, but I possess evidence, take a look here. I navigated my smartphone and presented a specific webpage to my in-laws. The director's introduction page featured a photo of Blake, sourced from my law firm's website. This is impossible. This time, they found themselves compelled to remain quiet. A dignified woman in her 50s, smiling, gazed at the camera. My in-laws had presumed that Blake was a male, due to the name. However, Blake was a woman. Blake was my father's sister and my supporter who had set up my position at the law firm. So, who was involved in a romantic entanglement with whom? That was merely a miscommunication. We were completely unaware that it was a woman. The name itself is the source of the confusion. As I faced them with a serious demeanor and an intense gaze, they appeared visibly unsettled. Now you will confront the repercussions of all the ways you've ridiculed me. With that statement, I disclosed that I possessed proof of all the harassment directed towards me. I captured footage of them entering my room uninvited and taking my things on security cameras, along with their ongoing harassment each day. All the evidence is meticulously organized and ready to present. I am contemplating pursuing legal measures. If you assert that you are not responsible for these actions, we can address the matter in a legal setting. Hold on a second. It appears there is a bit of confusion on our part. Let's delve deeper into this conversation. We never intended to cause you any distress. It was merely a subtle discord of emotions. Indeed. What would compel us to act cruelly towards our son's wife? It's merely a misinterpretation. Just a misinterpretation. Is it possible that I misunderstood? Their excuses pushed my simmering anger to its breaking point. Since the day I said I do, you've subjected me to unimaginable hardships. How can you claim it's a misunderstanding after labeling me an uneducated parasite? My in-laws seemed to shrink back from my intense presence. At last, they appeared to grasp the hierarchy at play. And you? You were aware of how your parents were treating your wife, yet chose to turn a blind eye. Additionally, you engaged in relationships with several women. What a despicable individual. Edward recoiled as my fury unexpectedly shifted in his direction. That. I acknowledge my mistake. I will embrace a fresh start and put in my best effort moving forward. Kindly. Edward lowered his head in a sorrowful manner, yet this failed to stir any feelings within me. Anger and disgust welled up within me as I watched Edward continue to make excuses, even in this dire situation. I'm weary of listening to those phrases. Didn't you say the same thing when you faced disciplinary action and were let go? So, what transpired? Until just now, there was a woman in your hospital room. Everything remains the same. Edward fell silent, his head bowed in defeat. If only he had taken more responsibility, perhaps our future would have looked different, but there's little use in dwelling on that now. I am ending our marriage. From this point forward, strive diligently to earn your keep. And keep your flirtations in check or you'll truly damage your reputation. However, that is no longer something I need to worry about. Amanda, we shared a bond, didn't we? Could you please think it over without expressing such frightening thoughts? Indeed. We considered you to be our true daughter. Let's resolve our differences and foster a harmonious relationship moving forward. The self-serving remarks from my in-laws brought an unexpected chuckle from me. Had they truly overlooked the way they consistently belittled and ridiculed others? Recognizing their unfavorable situation, they cast aside their pride and began to flatter me. I considered them to be utterly disgraceful individuals until the very end. Oh, please, take it easy. In the end, I remain a mere observer in your world. From this point forward, support one another with only your true family. Although you will face significant challenges after losing the house. Having uttered those words, I exited the hospital room. Eventually, my in-laws insisted on staying in the house that was on the market until the very end. However, the real estate company, growing increasingly impatient, summoned the police to carry out a forcible eviction. Even though Liam received an acceptance from the university, my in-laws and Edward found themselves unable to cover the tuition costs. Liam arrived at my workplace, expressed regret for his previous disrespect, and implored me to cover his tuition fees. However, I declined, stating that I was merely a stranger to him now. Following that, it seems his university enrollment was not feasible, leading him to choose to enter the workforce after high school. He likely never envisioned finding himself in the same situation as me. Someone he had regarded with disdain for possessing merely a high school diploma. However, this presents a valuable chance to address his tendency to view others with disdain. In contrast to my in-laws and Edward, he still possesses the potential for change. I wish for him to grasp the realities of society and develop the ability to empathize with the suffering of others. Subsequently, I pursued legal action regarding the harassment from my in-laws and my husband's infidelity, ultimately securing a modest compensation from Edward and my in-laws. Following that, Edward and his family seemingly relocated to a modest public housing unit. Both Edward and his elderly parents were required to go to work, and Liam found employment at a small factory. My in-laws seemed to share with those around them that the fish they let slip away was quite large. Upon hearing this, I feel quite relieved that I chose not to disclose my profession as a lawyer earlier. If they had been aware that my earnings surpassed Edward's, the situation would have escalated into even greater complications. I had no intention of being a financial support for my in-laws. Once my divorce from Edward was finalized, I relocated to a new apartment, utilizing the funds from the sale of the house and land. The new home offers ample space for solitary living, and it has transformed into my favorite area, adorned with decor that reflects my personal style. During my time with Edward's family, I experienced a stifling sense of confinement due to the heavy atmosphere.